Alright, hello everyone, my name is Dîsc, and in this video we have a 27 Atal'Dazar, and for the week cycle we are Tyrannical, Incorporeal, and Spiteful. So if you're new to my channel, I am available on Medify.gg, which is a coaching platform for online gamers. The mission statement of my YouTube channel is to try and teach people how to min-max discipline and get the most out of their toon. When you are min-maxing your character, I think it's more fun. I find the fun in WoW in min-maxing, and the better output you can push as a healer, the more fun it is, the more success you're going to have. And I really do my best to play-by-play call the shots, not only mechanics from mobs and maybe my play of spells, but I'm also trying to highlight my thought processes behind my decisions, and I think that is the more invisible part of watching someone's gameplay and the more useful part. So the way this channel goes is I kind of open with an introduction talking about a few things that might have changed, then we will address talents, and then we will address the meters for this run, and then we will do a voiceover of the run itself. So a few things I've been working on is playing my combat potion on cooldown. I've added a glow to my combat potion to help me see when it comes available, and I'm getting a lot better at it. And in this key, this is a full group of ours minus the mage, and I've been having a lot more fun playing the game with a group. We have Theorize, the demon hunter, we have a new paladin that we brought in, and we have Karma, the evoker, who is excellent. And a lot of times we have a fifth mage, but this one was a plug-in, but it was just fine. So here are the talents for this run. Over on the priest side, there is not too much to talk about here. I do take Disease Dispel, and that is for one of the bosses. You don't necessarily need it, but it is a safer play. We don't need Mass. I do take Dominate Mind for the Incorporeal. An option is take Shackle. I think that's a little more safe, especially if you're in a pug environment. But in Discord, we're calling who is casting on which being. And if it's ever a being that is too close to another trash mob, I'm just saying I can't get it. So one of the downsides of using Dominate Mind is it can aggro hostile groups because it turns the being friendly. Another downside is if you double up and two of you CC the same Incorporeal, it is a hard 30 seconds before you can cast it again. So you have to have really good group coordination to get use out of this, but if you can do that, there is a lot of value in mind controlling them. You can decrease the damage output of a mob by 10%, which is pretty huge, especially on a Tyrannical week. And then the rest of this is pretty simple. I do like voting a couple of defensive points here. Definitely like the Bulwark. I think that's a great defensive point, especially since I don't use Spore Cloak. Then over on the Discipline side, this is where I've had a little bit of change since my last video, and I'm really loving this build. I think it is a lot of fun, and I think as I'm getting into higher keys, this is going to be a really good play. So I am running Harsh Discipline. I think this is the play. I know in the past I said I think Expiation is the way to go. I just don't like the extra work of Expiation. I think there is more value here, so I guess I am just changing my opinion on that. But then I have this one point that's left over that last week I tried TE. Before I was trying this Malicious Intent up here along Schism, but now I've put it into Wheel and Woe, and I think this is going to be a really strong play. So now that I am taking Harsh Discipline, Wheel and Woe has a lot more power. So for the most part, I'm giving this proc to my smites, but I just like having access to a large single target heal, a large shield. So the reason I made my switch over here is because to get my Harsh Discipline value, I'm trying to, most of the time, place my Radiance before Mindbender. And the reason I'm doing that is because when Mindbender's out, smiting is so important. If we have to work in a Radiance and sacrifice smites, the trade-off of that is our Mindbender is going to have less uptime. It's just the nature of the beast. But sometimes we have to put a Radiance in our Mindbender. So it's not a bad thing, but whenever you can not put a Radiance within your Mindbender, the more you're adding to his uptime. And I hope that's making sense. I'm not just rambling already. But yeah, so I'm getting the harsh value by dropping my Radiance in front of the Mindbender. And since I'm getting all of these extra bolts on my first penance, not the latter penance, my thought was I don't need Long Schism, so I can put all of these extra bolts from Harsh Discipline on a regular Schism since I'm front-loading my Radiance. I hope that makes sense. So I'm getting my extra bolts of Harsh Discipline on a regular Schism. They're not hitting the latter half of a Schism, so I don't need the Long Schism. Therefore, I'm taking Wheel and Woe. And we have a couple really good examples in this key of how to use Radiance as a currency the right way and the wrong way, and we'll highlight those when we get there. But first, let's quickly flash the healing. And there's not too much to look at here. I just flashed this up mainly because I'm trying to highlight that Atonement is the main driver for our heals, and the correlation I want anyone watching this video to make is that our Atonement healing comes from attacking. So we really need to find a rhythm where we are comfortable in attacking mobs and trusting our atonements. If we get in this rhythm where we're using Radiance for a heal, you're just going to be, one, using too much mana, you're not going to be using your spells properly, and that is not where the bulk of your heals come from. So we have to be attacking mobs and trust our atonements. And then this is a little bit more telling for what's going on here. This is our damage profile, and off the top, I'm doing about 62,000 damage per second, which is excellent. That is with an AUG buff. And the most telling part of this meter is when you look at the first 3 line items, and you always want them to be in this order, in about this proportion. So Mindbender on top, followed by Dark Reprimand, followed by Smite. We're aiming for our Mindbender to be around 25% of the overall. I think it's also important to notice the value. So it's at like 24 million damage. If you're comparing my numbers to yours, just because your percentages are in the right ratio, you can you need to aim for this high of an output. I will say this was a 99 parse for healing and damage. So this spread is really taking the most out of this dungeon and getting the most out of your spec. And then I also wanted to bring in, I'm starting to do this more and more. It's I just learned that you can do this in details, but you can look at your Shadow Covenant uptime, and that is a real tell for how well you're playing your spells. This number is a little bit low, and that's just because that's what the dungeon demands. A lot of our bosses are set up in such a way where we have to kind of hold our Mindbender for damage incoming. So Yazma, the humanoid, wait, is the Yazma's the last one. The boss that does the gold, and then the last boss, we have to time our Mindbender in such a way that we are sacrificing uptime. So this is just a little bit lower of a number because of that, but overall, my uptime on Mindbender was very high. It's just there are certain boss fights where you have to hold, and that is just the way it goes. So again, I'm available on metafy.gg if you would like a lesson. I really like teaching. I think a one-on-one environment provides more to the student. And if you've not seen it, check out my new lesson I did this week. I think it was a really good one where I got into a lot of depth with our priest, talking about do's and don'ts and things we need to change in our UI. So whenever we have our Mindbender out, we have to always get 6 torments. We need to aim for 7 and 8 with our execute resets. And all of these things are highly dependent on your UI, and it might be something that is undervalued. It might be hard for you to make the correlation that a strong UI helps you play your spells, but it really does. So we have to have certain things shown on our screen in order to know what to prioritize. And anything outside of that that doesn't help us play our spells more or in better timing, we need to minimize off our screen. And in a lot of cases, we want to just take it off entirely. So check out my lesson video with him, and we're going to talk about more things in this video. But it was a really good key. I don't think I died once. I think we only had a couple of deaths, and we are kind of like auditioning this Paladin. We've played with him a couple of times, the tank Paladin. I am going to send this video to you as well. I think there's a couple areas where I would have some critiques on you. I think we need more wogs from our tank, Words of Glory, and we definitely need more sacks. And not only more sacks, better timed sacks. And I think it will come more with more coordination between us. But mainly the last boss, and we'll talk about that when we get going. But with all that being said, let's go ahead and clip over to the key. All right, here we go. At the start of the key, I'm always planning where my PI is going to go. And in this key,
5, 4,
it is Theorize.
3,
and that is because
2,
we're in Discord. That's because
1.
he's my pal. And because he pumps. So I'm watching for that meta. You notice OmniCD showing just one spell for him. That is his meta. I'm using that entire add-on for one purpose, and it's to help me maximize my PI. So it shows me when it's cast, it shows me the cooldown, and it's really helpful. So I'm fading in, levitating in for style. And with all of these ads, let's see what they do. Our meta's out.
4, 3,
Yeah, it looks like I'm going into an early Rapture
1.
just to help this transition. No paints ups on cooldown yet, so not getting the best value. And that is really good meld technique. You have to wait for the Pursuit cast to finish casting before you cast meld, but it really saves a lot of time. And cringe watching this back. My PI was almost totally missed on Theorize, so that was a big rip for the first PI of the dungeon, but we turned it around, thankfully.
2, 1.
So I think you can bait this mechanic. It's going to be one of the two furthest away people, and I did get that one, so that's good. The other teammates can just do their job in DPS. And this is a really interesting case where we don't need Radiance, and I'm spending both of them just for the Harsh Discipline value on my shorter Schism. So I'm casting both of those kind of as a currency before I go into Mindbender
4,
to make sure I get that value
2,
and to make sure it hits the Schism that I'm not buffing anymore. And that, I think this is a really fun grip for the win. This is a really fun boss because you don't get many opportunities just to dump 2 Radiance in a row. And we'll see when I get to Yazma. I tried doing that and it kind of bit us in the butt. There are a lot of cases where we need to reatone in the middle of our Mindbender, and we don't want to have spent both of our Radiance just for a little damage grab. But on a boss like this, we don't really need atonements in group. We don't really need group-wide healing. So I'm spending both of my Radiance just to get a really fat penance on a Schism to buff a Smite on my Schism. Really good value. See, I think I do it again here. There's a double Radiance, then Mindbender, Mind Blast, Penance, Death, and then a really fat Smite on that Schism. Six, 7 torments. We're getting better. And if you notice, I've talked about it in the past, but if you've not seen my videos in a while, I have a weak aura to track my torments, and it places a little numeric on top of the Mindbender's icon. So right now we're at 4, and I think we get an 8 here, which is really good for the start of the key. Smiting, smiting, smiting. 6, 7, 8. So that is really good. 8 is the maximum. There are possibilities for 9 if you're willy-nilly throwing your Mind Blast, but I don't really think that is the play in a lot of scenarios. So 8 is your max. You can always get 6. The 7th and 8th come from double executes. 2 double executes. So boss 1 down, that was a really good burn, except for my failed PI. But I am back on sync with Theorize. And noticing that red bar that pops up right above my action bars, that is indicating a cast is going out and marking a really good fear opportunity for us. So almost every pull has a best place to fear. I don't really see much value in tracking kicks within the party. I think a better way to maximize your fear is just by tracking the cast you're trying to interrupt in a stationary spot. That's why I put it in that red bar. So we fully have kicks covered here because we're coordinating, but the way I would use that Vol'kaal with the red bar is if that red bar gets too close to completion is when I throw my fear bomb regardless if someone else has a kick or not. I'm just using it based upon if it gets too close to casting. And in this next group, you'll notice on the enemy nameplates, I'm tracking a spell timer. It is the Merciless Assault. You see it on the Juggernauts. We are kicking that in group, but don't expect that in a pug. So in comms, I'm calling that the Merciless Assault is about to go out, and we are completely stopping them from jumping, except for that one. But the best thing you can do as a healer is stand far back to gain a little bit of extra time because the attack travels. And as the attack is going off, make sure you're in motion with a speed boost. So I'm paying really close attention to these 3 Merciless Assault timers. I also, that is the only audible I'm tracking with my bigwigs. You hear a little ding. And when they're casting, I'm just making sure I'm moving. And this is unusual. You don't always get this in a trash pack, but I'm getting a second Mindbender. In a pack like this, that's pretty big, plus we have shades coming out, I'm paying really close attention to when my Mindbender comes back available, and I send it almost instantly. And that was another 8 torments. Getting to spells as necessary in group. I think we're banking a lot of our stops for the Merciless Assault. So these little fireballs are going out, and not too dangerous on Tyrannical, but definitely doesn't hurt to protect your team with a Dispel. Okay, we don't see these guys too often, but the big golem is definitely the focus target. Noticing with my KUI nameplates, he is the darkest red, indicating he has the most health. Therefore, that is who I'm going to attack. As my opener, I'm just dotting all the mobs, making sure I have a renew on the tank, a pre-radiance for the Harsh Discipline, focusing the Colossus and kind of staying in motion here. I can also purge the Colossus. Yeah, I think there was a lot of movement in other spells I was playing, but that was only a 5 torment window. Happens sometimes. But we do have PI. We're saving for the group upstairs. It came up mid-combat here. Switching my target to preserve the dot. Always good if you're going to penance to make sure you're penancing someone with a dot. And I Mind Soothe and Fade just to gain a little extra real estate here. PI's up, Mindbender's up. And we're going into a big pull here. Opening with all my dots, that is always a good choice for an opener. Just spread all of your dots in party. Dispelling to soften this transition. Getting some regular long atonements out. Pre-radiance, Mindbender. And the reason I'm not on the Juggernaut, I'm on the Priestess here, is because... Tutor down, he has some dots on him. It's not a good idea to torment the Juggernaut because he's likely to jump out of the group and the AoE ability of your Mindbender will miss So I'd rather schism and attack someone that is not going to jump out of the group to make sure I'm getting that value. Here's my second Mindbender on the Healthy Priestess. Picking up a double execute on the front end of the Mindbender. Let's see if I get 8. I'm at 5. I'm smiting. 6, 7, 8. So another 8. That's really good. So whenever my Mindbender's out, the first thing I'm focusing on is making it to my second penance as quickly as possible. So I Mindbender, Mind Blast, Penance, Death. And then we have a small interim before our penance is back where I'm just smiting. It's my first order of business and highest priority to get to my second penance before I start doing anything else. So I smite. I think it's 3, and then my second penance is up. And then, yeah, you just hit your second death when it comes up. So this is a boss where you might be able to fit in a Mindbender before the first transfusion, but it's a little tight. I might experiment in the future, but we're really trying to time this. So I'm holding Mindbender until this transfusion, and it looks like we have Vampiric Embrace, which I will pair up. There's a Dispel. I'm also focusing on purging the boss. I lead with a double Radiance for the value. And see what happens here. So I didn't have a second Radiance mid attack, and I was not able to reatone the group, and we were put in a kind of vulnerable position because of that double Radiance, and I don't do it again. So my Mindbender is not back yet. I really need to get him back with a couple of smites. It looks like I'm using a Rapture just to kind of help my Pain Sup cooldown, and I also gave myself a Pain Sup. There is PI. And that was cringe too. I remember when it happened in the key. I went into my Mindbender window and did everything right except cast my Mindbender. Happens sometimes, but you want to make sure you cast your Mindbender. But that also put me in a sticky situation here because we need him for the next transfusion. Also notice with Bigwigs, that is the only attack I'm tracking. Last transfusion was a darkness, this one is a barrier, and we're all good. So I messed up my personal spells, but it didn't really impact the play. But I definitely learned from that experience where I can't use a double Radiance on fights like that. That double Radiance for the value on the short Schism is really only going to be a strong play on fights where you don't need coverage. And we needed coverage there. So I have to really focus here to get my Mindbender back on track. He has a long cooldown, so I'm favoring my smites. And he's almost back, targeting the healthiest mob here, and Mindbender. Also threw my combat push in there, getting a double execute on the front. Let's see if I make 8 torments. We're at 5, 6, 7, 8. So I'm getting a lot of 8 torments here. That is really good. That is the best you can do. Mindbender is available, leading with some regular atonements. And it looks like on this one I did not do a pre-radiance for the value. I just wanted to get into my Mindbender. But I did a radiance in the middle. And that was 7 torments. That is excellent. And oftentimes with Mindbender, we have this small gap in between. And it's not because you did anything wrong. It's just the way it goes sometimes. But you're going to have a gap of maybe like 5 to 10 seconds before he's back available. And using something like Rapture in that interim is perfect. Especially if a Pain Sup is on cooldown. Also in that interim, something like Barrier is perfect. But more times than not, if I ever find I have a gap between my Mindbenders, I'm reaching for that Rapture. And on a side note, you can replay any of these Rapture moments, and notice how I'm using my Grid2 to keep shields up where they're depleted. And in this group, you don't see it too often, but noticing on the nameplate of one of the dinosaurs, we're tracking one spell. That is the AoE Thrash. That is a great place to line up your heals. It is non-fortified, so it's not going to be a big deal one way or another. And then if you notice in Party, I have that white dotted line going out. That is showing the humanoid is targeting that person with a single target attack. It is quite deadly, and I almost die from it here. I have loaded, so she has two single target attacks. I only had one loaded in, so I loaded in the second to be a little bit more aware of where her attacks are going. And I think here in a second you see she targets me. That attack wasn't loaded in yet, and I got boinked. That was 7 torments, really good. So she has 2 attacks where she shoots people, and I have both of them loaded in now. So in a case like that where if I was targeted, I would have absolutely shielded myself, if not walled also. But on this we have a lot of damage going out, and it's spiky damage, so it's a great place for barrier. Quickly get into my Mindbender. Toss a Mind Control for the assist. And due to that extra cast, I might miss my 6 torments. Oh hell. I actually got all 8. So often when you have to work in a Radiance, or if you have to work in a Mind Control, that is too much time lost to get all of your torments. And on this pack, Mindbender's up. The first order of business is Dot, and we want to get into Mindbender ASAP. I led with a Radiance for the Harsh Discipline value, and within my Mindbender, I'm focusing on CDR, basically CDR and Torments. Paying really close attention to Death and Penance. And the way this pull went, I did not have an option to get 7 or 8 Torments, but I did get 6. And we had these Stalkers join. We really want to get our next Mindbender out. Open with a Radiance for the value. Here goes our second Mindbender. Picked up an extra Death. And got 8 Torments again, so that's really, really good. 8 Torments is hard to do because you have to get a double execute at the front of your Mindbender window and the back. And a lot of times a pull just doesn't provide that for you. So it's kind of luck based, but when you can get 8, you're doing really good. And going into this boss, the coordination is I'm always dispelling myself. The Paladin has a disease dispel, which she's throwing on someone else. And as the healer, we do pretty good damage, but not like our DPS. The best thing you can do to aid your group is kind of keep an eye on all 3 totems and poke at the one that has the most health. Dot them all, of course. Also, this phase is long enough to fit in a Mindbender. Let's see. And that was a good example of why I take Star over Halo. I needed to move, but don't want to drop my actions per minute, so something like Star is great if you have to move. And yeah, due to that move, having to throw Star in at an inopportune time, only had 5 Torments, but that's how it goes sometimes. Kind of selected a lot here. Mindbender just came back available, but I don't think I play it on these totems. I think I hold him for when the boss activates. So this totem has the most health. I am going to poke at it. I think I accidentally cast that Star. And honestly, I wish that wasn't sheeped. But the Mage is not in Discord with us because I really would have liked the value of mind controlling that guy on the boss. Happens sometimes, better be safe than sorry, but... Okay, here's PI. I have a Harsh Discipline from a pre-Radiance. And the name of the game here is Just Pump. If you ever get ooze dropped under you, you have to move quickly. 6 torments, that's base. And we have an interim here where Mindbender is 10 seconds away. Looks like I'm doing some just regular atoning for long atonements. Pre-radiance for the value. Mindbender, Mind Blast, Penance, Death. Six torments, that's the best we can do. A little hairy. There's our pre-radiance for the value. Mindbender just came available. Here we go again. I have a full proc on the penance this time. And we're a little bit spooked by those guys. I was trying to Mind Soothe, but I can't. Due to the panic, I'm losing a lot of casts here, but we really don't want to pull those guys. So I fade. And that helps me get across. And looks like we caught back up. But so in a moment like this, the Mindbender's down. I'm heavily focused on his cooldown because we want to play him as soon as he's back. I opted to put a Rapture in between just to soften some blows, and that timed up perfectly with Mindbender coming back. I'm a little bit spooked here trying to get that guy. Okay, we're in execute range. We should be able to get 8 torments. Let's see what happens. Pre-radiance for the value. Double death. 5 torments. And I would have had... Oh, it says... So I would have had 8 torments there, but the guy died. So we were in a really good spot, but we just pumped too hard. And this is really funny. If anyone wonders my weakness in Warcraft, it's walls. So. Also on that fight, using Desperate Prayer kind of liberally is not a bad idea. Desperate Prayer is our shield wall, is our main defensive. Also, never forget we have a single shield you can give yourself. That is a very reliable, small defensive as well. Especially if it's paired with Wheel and Woe. I don't think I've called any examples yet in this key, but a Wheel and Woe shield can crit for over 300,000, which is insane. And then we have last boss here. We had a couple of deaths for warning, but we did have a one-shot. And we timed this key. It was 10 extra points, but something that I would like to see more from our Paladin is he missed a lot of his Blessings of Sacrifice. It's a 1-minute cooldown. This is a 5-minute fight. We should have had at least 5. He only cast 2, and the ones he cast were late. So you want to cast it before the Racking Pain. And then also, I don't think he's giving too many wogs to the team, which is a huge miss on a Tyrannical week. The best thing a Paladin tank can do is wog the team. So we'll see a white dotted line with whom is targeted with the Racking Pain, and then it turns red, indicating the dot. Since I had a Pain Sup on cooldown, I opened with a Rapture just to soften everything, leading with the Mage, who was targeted by the Racking Pain cast. That one you can see went on the Demon Hunter. And the reason it's important to see not just that he was hit with a dot, but that he's about to get hit with a dot, is because it has a really heavy up front hit, and you want to shield it, like right there. So whenever I see that white dotted line, I try and get ahead of it with a shield to lessen that blow, or get ahead of it with a Pain Sup to lessen that blow. The dot itself isn't nearly as threatening as the application. Shielded the Racking Pain to reduce that up front. And this is another boss where we're going to lose uptime on our Mindbender because we really just want to bank our Mindbenders for each Soul Rend, so we're going to have downtime. Shielded that Racking Pain. And this is a really great example where the tank is... We've had like 3 or 4 Racking Pains, and he's not played Sack yet. So it's the type thing where just like I'm pre-shielding, you would ideally pre-Sack to reduce that heavy hit on the front. And I think he finally works it in on one of these. Yeah, he works it in on that one, but he cast it after the application, and it's still valuable. But I would say it's not the best use of Sack. You want it to go out before the Racking Pain hits. It's not a reaction, it's more proactive. Shielded that one. I think that was a Wheel and Woe shield on Karma that really helped reduce that slam. And that was my second Rapture just to soften that attack. So my PI is up. I'm getting a little bit stressed out, I can tell by my playstyle. PI is late, better late than never. Perhaps it would have been better on the Mage who can wail easier. But in the heat of the moment, that just didn't happen. This is another area where he has Sack available and did not use it. Oh, I'm on the wrong side. I'd have to watch that back, but I think he got hit by a spider. And we really need Sack here. Yeah, so our tank... Sack, I think, is an easy fix, but the wogging part, the Words of Glory that are not getting out, are really hurting the team. And I hate to sound like a crybaby, but I really just think it's the name of the game in high keys. To put all the responsibility of the party living on one person creates a weakness. It has to be a team effort. And wogs on our allies that are selected with Racking Pain would make a huge difference. And right there, I just really wanted to make sure I lived, so I had to use a Paints Up on myself, which is not the best place for a Paints Up here. It would make a huge difference if we had our Paladin playing his spells a little bit better. And like, reading between the lines on it a little bit, we've not had a death yet to the Racking Pain. But one of the recoils that you might not think about is look at my mana reserves. I'm at 15%. And it's because I'm having to put so much into these because we're not approaching the Racking Pain as a team effort. It's all on my shoulders and eating up my mana. He could put us. He has another Sack. He could use Sack on Theorize. He didn't. It was all on me. The reason I think Sack and Paladins are so good on Tyrant weeks is because the tank isn't nearly in as much danger as the party. So he can sacrifice a little bit of his health and we're fine. They give me a spell warning, which was great, but I'm out of mana. Okay, I think that Sack was better, but I still think it happened after the application on Karma. But the name of the game here, it's, should have talked about it a little bit sooner, but you want to corral the spiders in such a way where they're kind of always behind you. You want to stay in front of them, and we're doing a pretty good job of it. And Karma got ate up by a spider there again. Not too sure. Yeah, but here's a problem where I simply ran out of mana and I didn't have the resources to get up our team before that hit. And this is another prime example where our Paladin is not playing healer well enough yet. I almost died there just because combat ended. It's not an opportunity to take your hands off the keyboard. He really should have been spamming me with spells. And he just stopped casting. And I really, Walnut, if you watch this, I like you. I think you're a good tank, so does the group. But I would really love to see more wogs. I think it'll strengthen the group a ton. Even if per pull you only cast maybe one wog, it would exponentially help the group. And I think another note is if you can get ahead of these racking pains with your sack, it is better utilized than using it reactionarily. And I think a Weakar like my targeted cast Weakar would really help you as a tank. And it would really strengthen the group and protect people's health a little bit more if you played it in a different manner, a different timing. So yeah, thanks everyone for tuning in. Please check out my Metafy if you want a private lesson. I love teaching. I love helping. Please check out my other video I put out this week where I helped another priest with reviewing one of his keys in a Waycrest manner. And I don't think I'm going to make another video this week because of the holidays, but stay tuned for next week where I'm going to put out another video in Fort. And yeah, thanks everyone again for tuning in. And until next time, Dîsc.